morning for me. I'm in South Korea. What time is it for you, Amy?
It is 9:30 p.m.
So we have morning, noon, and night. Yes, let me see. How is it? Is there a way to share this? I'm going to share this to the other group chat too, just in case he didn't see it.
Yeah, I invited him in twice.
Okay. So, I guess while we wait, then would you want to introduce yourself briefly? We'll do a bigger introduction in a couple of minutes, but would you like to introduce yourself, Amy? And then if you would like, I'm trying to see the full name. Black Hole, you could also introduce yourself later.
Yes, so my name is Amy, and I am a programmer that is the sole founder of Glot Squad, which is a community-driven language learning platform that is in its beginning stages. So I met Tiara on Christmas Eve of last year, and we decided that we wanted to start hosting these spaces together once a week. So I'm really excited to do these spaces with Tiara. So, what about you, Mr. Black? What's your name?
Yeah, you can call me Sam, and I'm 46 years old. I'm from Oman, which is in Middle East. And yeah, I think that's enough for now.
That's great. Is there a name that you would like to be called, or do you prefer Mr. Black?
Yeah, he just said Sam. His name is Sam.
Yes,
Yeah. Sam. Yeah, Sam, and you can call me Black as well.
Okay. Sam Black. That sounds like a powerful name too. But nice to meet you, Sam.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Tiara.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you on vacation now, Tiara?
Am I on where?
Vacation?
Sorry, say that again?
Yes. I'm on vacation right now. So I'm an English teacher in South Korea. And finally, I have 2 weeks of vacation time to relax at home and just wait for my boyfriend. He's in surgery he did a surgery last week, and he'll be coming later this week back home. And so for now, I have a lot of free time to just think about the future with languages and what my study plan is.
Yeah, I wish he is better now and settled.
So this is interesting. It's really nice over here. But here's an interesting thing. So our co-host is listening to us, but they're not able to join in. I don't see our guest here yet, but I just messaged him. But yeah, so far I like it here. It's really calm, even though we have the coronavirus cases. It's interesting because I don't know. I really like it here. It's a different culture. I'm originally from the United States, but I really like exploring. So this is a nice opportunity. I like it. I don't talk about it a lot because I've been here for so long. This is my 3rd year here. So it's starting to feel a little bit like home. But the culture, the transportation, the students, I really like it here.
So, Sam, what languages are you learning?
I couldn't hear you properly, so can you repeat your question, please?
Yes, and I will even get the mic off so that you can actually hear me. So, I was just asking, what languages are you learning, Sam?
Yeah, actually, my native language is Arabic, and I have been learning English for like 4 years now. but I haven't been to any school or college as well. Actually, I started learning English after my retirement, which was in 2018, and I started my journey like on my own, trying to find out, especially in this era, we have all these like resources like YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So I'd been listening and learning online. I haven't, as I told you before, I haven't been to any school. So yeah, as so far so good. I could say that.
Wow. That's amazing. So Arabic and English, how different are these two languages for you, and what are some of the challenges you've had so far with studying English?
They are totally different actually, because if I could say they are versa, like upside down. Arabic started from right to left, and English started from left to right. So even when we speak about like in English we say like a beautiful car. In Arabic we say it like car beautiful. So this is a challenge for me, because in the beginning I couldn't express myself in English. I couldn't say things. I have a good memories, and I have like more vocabularies. In the beginning I faced the other problem: how can I do the structure of the sentences. The problem is I do it like in Arabic way, which is like totally wrong and different in English. So as I said in the beginning, the problem is I have no teacher or someone to guide me. So as much as I listen, as much as I could like do it better. So yeah, I think this was the problem, the difference between languages, and how can you like express yourself in the new language. Yeah, that was the only thing in the beginning was like challenging me.
Wow. I mean, I think this is just interesting to hear from, like, normally in our groups so far, a lot of the listeners or speakers have they have strong English skills. So it's interesting to see when English is not the first language, and like hearing struggles, especially from an Arabic speaker, because I'm interested in Arabic too, and it's a goal of mine within the next 5 years to start it. But I've heard a little bit about how different these two languages. So I was a little curious too, because I'm a little afraid to start it.
I know. The problem is Arabic is very like hard to someone who didn't speak it before, or he hasn't had someone to speak with, because Arabic is, the problem is the pronunciation is like a very strong pronunciation. English all about mouth, but Arabic, from inside you, like, if I pronounce now some words or some, letters, it will shock you, and I think it's very hard. It's like German. When I say ein, it's, it's not like English. English, it's all about, mouth, O, E, A, it's just like very easy comparing to Arabic. I think Arabic it's too hard for someone like he hasn't been talking Arabic before, or even something similar to Arabic.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just, I know that there are some sounds that are so unique to each language, and it's hard to figure out how to pronounce them if you haven't been exposed to it or if your mouth isn't used to creating those sounds. So it's interesting. Thank you so much for just talking with me about it, because it's a goal of
You're
mine.
welcome. I can be your teacher in Arabic if you teach me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would
if
be
you teach
amazing.
me something else.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get into this, I guess, in a little bit. We might as well start. I don't know how you feel about it, Amy, but it would be cool to talk about our language experiences, and maybe I am willing to teach in 1 or 2 languages if you're willing.
Well, I think that Twitter Spaces is actually a good place to do language tutoring for free, because, well, mostly if you are going to do it for free, Twitter Spaces is a good space because you can have multiple people talking, and maybe like if this was like an English Arabic space, then you would have multiple people that could translate and get that back and forth. So that's why I like social audio. But my experience is I was a Japanese major for 3 years in college, and the Japanese sentence structure is different than English, so I understand, Sam, some of your difficulties with forming sentences. But then on my 4th year, I decided to learn Chinese, and I lived in China for 3 years. And that was interesting because I don't know if you know this about China, but there's Putonghua, which is like Beijing dialect, which is the official dialect of like Mandarin. But each locality has their own like variation of how they speak Chinese, and it's not understandable from Mandarin. So I never lived in Beijing, so like my pronunciation is kind of bad in Chinese because none of the people I spoke to spoke that way. I was going somewhere with this. The topic for tonight is like, how do you keep language learning fun? So like for me, when I came back to America to become a programmer, all of a sudden it like wasn't in my daily life, and like how do you keep up with it? Like, is it flashcards? Flashcards are kind of boring. Like, what do we do when like we're not motivated? How do we make it fun? So
Yeah. So a little bit more about my language journey, and then kind of bringing it back to Amy's point of today's topic. The first language I learned outside of English was Spanish, and I lived in a multilingual community ever since I was in elementary school, and I had a similar issue when I moved from my hometown in high school, because when I moved to a different city, there weren't a lot of Spanish speakers, and I went from going to the convenience store, which they call the bodega, and being able to use Spanish for going to grocery stores or just getting snacks or even for ordering food in different restaurants, to only using English in my high school hometown. It was difficult to figure out ways to keep Spanish interesting and like useful in my daily life. And then when I was able to go to college, I studied Latin and ancient Greek, and that's how I learned about languages with different characters, like including Mandarin and Japanese, or even Arabic, like I said, which has always been on my list to learn. And I also studied Italian in college, which kind of made it difficult for me to connect Spanish and Italian, or not connect, but separate Spanish and Italian, because those two languages are so similar. And again, I didn't practice Spanish for a long time because of because I moved. And so when I came back from my study abroad in Italy, I decided I'm going to learn Japanese because one of my roommates was from Japan, and I learned a lot about the culture, and it was fun. So it was fun because it was useful, and I guess that's why I learned most of the languages I did. And randomly, I had this idea and I ran with it. And right after I graduated, I came to South Korea to teach English. So I am really excited to talk about this because each language that I've studied had a different purpose in my life, and that's one of the things we talk about, and it will also help with figuring out how to keep language learning fun. So I want to talk about this, and I wonder what you have to say, Sam, about what are some activities that you really liked when you were studying English?
I think, how we keep ourselves motivated. This is the main thing. So, yeah, we could, find a way to have fun with it as long as we motivate it. Because, the problem is in the beginning, when you feel that you have to learn a new language, you have a very strong feeling of learning, and you have energy to spend 5 4 hours a day sometimes. In the beginning you are very energetic and you just have fun with it, but by time you feel you don't have something to push you and to keep you up. So I think the motivation is the key of keep you going, learning, and because at the end of the day, what the purpose of keep yourself busy for 3 4 hours a day when there is no benefit from it, and there is nothing to do with this a new language. So you prefer to go out, spend some time with friends, or cook, or do anything, but what keeps you the spark? I mean, what the thing that keep you motivated? If we solve this problem, then we will have fun with anything. If we have something to push us and keep us going.
Those are very excellent points, Sam. So, one of my ethos of Glot Squad is I want to be able to use a lot of different types of activities to learn languages, because doing the same activity over and over again is very boring to me. So the first activity on Glot Squad is it's a journaling app where basically you paste in a newspaper article, and you highlight the words that you do know and you don't know, and then you use visual learning, it puts it in a list down on the bottom, and then you can click on each word and get an image of what it is, and that way you can come to a conclusion on what does it mean before you get the actual translation, if that makes sense. So to me that was a pretty solid first activity. That's not going to be the only activity, because I believe that doing things with YouTube videos and podcasts and other types of media, I'm a big believer of once you're past being a beginner, using real resources and being able to communicate in a real way is actually really motivating. So the other part is, how do we gamify it? Because for some reason people are I have to get my 7-day streak in. I need to get, now that I've reached this level, how do I get to the next level? How do we get people to do that without, burning people out?
Yeah, so one thing that I really like about making activities fun is just including some of the things that are already on your list for like why you're studying a language, or what are your interests for like music or books or shows, or even for even for like social media too. Nowadays, it's just as important to do things in your everyday life for social media accounts, or for when you are cooking, for example. I remember one of the chats that I joined, there were people talking about cooking shows or cooking blogs that they follow in order to give like read instructions or follow recipes for different uh, for different items or different foods, and that was interesting too. Um, and I guess one of the things that we can definitely talk about are, how do I say, I'm so excited about this topic, but I think one thing that's kind of cool is like, how do you keep track of your progress, I guess? I mean, do you count that as something that's fun? And if you do, what is your favorite? Some people like having notebooks and writing, and some people like flashcards. But what about you two?
Yeah. There is lots of spaces nowadays also we can like listen to, and I've been in such spaces like this, interested topics where we can like find lots of things we can share with people, especially if it's like a topic where you're interested in. And actually nowadays I'm like trying to listen for English as much as I can, just trying to, listen to more people from like Saudi Arabia, from Yemen, and the, in Middle East in general. So there is lots of topics where I can find myself like listening for like hours without like feeling bored or something, because I used to listen for spaces not just for this. I'm just, even when I'm like driving, going to somewhere, I don't know, I feel sometimes I'm addicted to listen to people in different ways. I don't know why, but this is my hobbies now. I think one of my interesting things to do.
Well, that's interesting too, because some people don't like consider listening activities as a fun thing. Some people use it as a way for studying when they don't have time to actively, or there's a strong like what is active studying, but some people think that studying with like language courses or textbooks or workbooks are active learning. But what you're doing is both fun for you, and it's a way for you to stay connected to the language that you're studying. So I really like that that's a way that you keep language learning fun. Thanks for sharing. Anything that you do, Amy?
Apparently, I just make, language learning software for fun to help me and everybody else learn languages. I'm pretty anti flashcard. Like it has its purpose and like it's effective. I just like my goals for learning Chinese are basically just to relax and not like I don't really need like to pass the HSK. I just want to be able to talk to someone and sound okay. I do really like spaces. There's one Chinese space that I've been going to, and I'm pretty sure they just talk about business. But it is nice to just talk to listen to people talking. And also to be able to find topics that you personally find interesting. That's another thing with Glot Squad, where you choose your own material. So I'm not going to force, it's unstructured learning. So you don't have to learn about like trains if you don't care about trains, but you can learn about like COVID-19 because everybody should be able to talk about COVID-19. It's a big topic. Or like climate change, you know? Um, I think we talked about this last week, but just setting aside time and then letting like your mood dictate what you're studying during that time, I feel is the best way to like not get burned out on a certain way of learning.
So, one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about in this Twitter space is how do we feel about including games in our language learning process?
So I'm gonna hop in front of Sam, but so there's a difference between like single person games, which are great, but are you talking about like multi-person games?
I'm just keeping it open. It could be any games. It could be multi-person games. It could even be a way for you to review when you're by yourself. It could be digital things. It could be something that you use with a physical board game or with having printed out flashcards. I'm not sure if either you or you, Sam or Amy, maybe you're used to using flashcards and then quizzing yourself or giving it to another person and having them quiz you. I would consider that a game. So just any kind of like activity that's not exactly taking notes or creating like worksheets and just filling out lines. Something that, I guess would be a fun way to interact with language with a game, not necessarily a video or typing, I guess.
Yeah, games is like one of the method that people learning languages and learning a new things because challenging one of like the best way to learn a new thing because this is the only way to like practice your memories and practice also and also discover a new like family words and lots of like games help people to learn new things and also it's a social way to learn new things with the people whether it is like physically or online doesn't matter but as long as there is a competition which is a natural way to learn a new things and also as a human being we love challenge and it's like very like fun way to do things without getting bored.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're on a similar page. What do you have to say about that, Amy? And then I have exciting news about one of the listeners who's here, but maybe you can see him, maybe not. But I can't wait to talk about this because even this person has so much to say about this topic.
Yes. So I could share with you my favorite games that I've ever played for language learning. One of them even still exists, I believe. So the first one is called Slime Forest. And what it was is, well, the premise was you're a potato farmer and you have to kill slimes, and the slimes are hiragana, katakana, and kanji. So it was a Japanese learning game. And I just had so much fun, like, going into the forest and, like, when you got the the character wrong, like the slime would get bigger and eventually it would eat you, and I'd be like, no, you're not going to eat me. And so, that was a really good game, and I'm just really sad it's not in other languages, so that's going to be one of the games eventually, because that was, like, I had tried to use flashcards to memorize hiragana and katakana, and it just didn't happen until that game. So, that was the first game. And then the other game I really liked and remembered, now I'm thinking about a third one. But the second one, it was basically just, you had a word, and you just had two choices, and every time you got a correct answer, it added to the timer, and every time you got it wrong, you can only get 3 in a row wrong. So, like, it was a competition between you and your friends. So that was kind of like flashcards, but it was also challenging. And then the third one was actually an Excel game. So it was, you chose the words you wanted to study, and then it challenged you on how well you knew the words. And then at the end, it colored the Excel square, and if it was dark green, you really knew the word. As you hadn't studied it in a while, it turned lighter till it was white again. But if it was like red or yellow, you didn't know the word at all. So that was a good Japanese game that I used to play in Excel.
These are all great ideas. I love those games. They sound a mix of cute and engaging. Again, I like this word engaging because even if it's not exactly your favorite game in the world, it's something that keeps your attention and allows you to come back to it when you feel like you need a break from traditional studying. And so, for me, I'm going to act more as the guest that's here and not able to speak at the moment, but he's listening to our conversation, and so far he's really enjoying it. So this is mainly for you, Sam, but his name is Matthew Boyle, and he's the one that created Legendary Language Learner. And so, language learning, I'm sorry. But I believe that this is a really great idea and a really great concept for including games into the way that you learn a language or the way that you practice or repeat some of the knowledge that you have. And I want to talk about some of the things that he really liked from our conversation, some things that he wanted to share, but also I really like the message and the overall theme that he has, because really he's encouraging language learning through games. And it's an important way for us to consider, like, if you are interested in a certain way of learning, and if you're able to incorporate it into how you learn, then it could be really powerful, because that's one of the ways that Duolingo or something like, it's one of the ways that Duolingo, or I'm trying to think, maybe there's another one I could think of, maybe Lingo Deer or even Anki. I've heard a lot about that for flashcards. Or even Quizlet. One of the ways that they get a lot of attention from the language learning community is that they have a fun aspect to it and something that is, again, engaging. And so I have personally played one of his games. I printed it out and I used it with some of my friends because we like card games and we like things that are mindless, but also they cause us to think about some prior knowledge. And I highly recommend it. It's a really great game. And even, I believe someone shared the account here. Yes. And so it's a really great resource to have for now or in the near future if you're interested in continuing your English studies, or if you're doing another language in the future, Sam, then that is fantastic. So he really liked Amy's ideas about dropping content into a program and then breaking things open. So for her content for Glot Squad, she's really interested in being able to use these apps or use her future games and programs where you can take real content and be able to learn from that real content. So he really liked that. And there's some ideas related to how to use games for language learning. So, of course, there are some games like Scrabble and Duolingo that are specifically for like learning or reviewing words and phrases and grammar. But there's another way of including games in the way that you learn, and that's adapting games. And so, for example, if you're playing card games in your target language, then you can include language challenges. And this is a project that I'm hoping to do in the near future with the regular deck of playing cards. And so that's interesting. But also, if you know MTG Arena or any other like fantasy, or I'm trying to think of another genre. Even board games can sometimes turn into a language learning experience if you're playing with people from different cultures or people from the culture that your culture and language that you're learning about. And you can learn about another culture's game with things like Chinese chess or mahjong or beat the landlord I'm seeing. And so you learn the culture and you learn a new game from their culture, and you learn about the vocabulary and certain things like giving instructions or reading instructions are just basic ways that like language learning can occur from playing games. And he agreed with you, Sam, in saying that we learn from a young age through playing games. And it's the same for me in Spanish class. What I loved is being able to learn a game that's not from my country. And because I'm playing the game, I have a good experience with learning a language. I'm not thinking of it as homework or as a class that's more of a burden. I like thinking about games as a way to remind yourself of why you do some of the hard work behind using what you know. Um, and there's some more, but I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm talking a lot because this person is awesome. Again, his name is Matthew, he's called himself Nat. I don't know if it's safe to say, but just in general, he's so awesome, and I had the honor of talking with him, and again playing his game called Language Guardians, and again, just the work that he's done in this field of using language learning in card games or just in games in general is so important for us, I think. And that's why I'm so passionate about introducing him. And it's such a shame you can't hear his voice because even his voice is so cool. But I do hope that he is able to inspire you a little bit to think of the way that you're learning language and include some fun aspects like board games or card games or digital games that might not say or scream language learning, but it's another way for you to learn. And in your case, especially if you're learning English, because there's so much out there online. So, yeah, I talked a lot. a lot, but with a good reason.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all this information. Actually, you like blew my mind actually, because I'm very interested in, and also I will try to keep up and go to see all these like games and the way that keep me like going and learn. Anyway, I think also, learning a new language it's very important to keep ourselves, awake, and also see another like cultures and know about a new people and new cultures and new things. But the most like difficult thing to to go deep in a new culture, actually, because it's not easy. When I've been learning English, I discover that the culture is not something you can learn easy. You have to, know the story about, about the. I mean, if we talk about like idioms, idioms or like any expression, there is, a story beyond any like thing. So if you don't have, you know, especially the joke, if someone, say a joke in English, mainly I wouldn't be able to understand it because it's not a joke. It's not just a joke. It's a story and a culture behind that joke. So how much I have knowledge about that joke, I have to, to go and, search about that word because the word it didn't, give me any clue. It's no sense, I couldn't even understand it. So it's a story. The culture is a very long story beyond it. So yeah, culture is something, very, very complicated and deep, and yeah, it's not easy for me to understand everything. But every time I learn something, sometimes, I feel I understand a part of this story. Next time, maybe I would be able to understand the next part, but it's a journey. It's a very long journey. I'm, I'm trying, but I think, when I learn a new language, then another new language, I have to be like, I have to spend time to learn. So it's okay. I'm trying. I know it's hard, but it's something I have to do and something keep me going and discover a new thing every day.
So, you're absolutely correct about culture being very hard to grasp. Even on Twitter, like, there's things that happen and everybody's tweeting about it until you find the source of what's happening. Sometimes it's hard to understand what is going on. Like, when people started saying, like, you buttered jorts, and everyone's like, what is a jort? Like, a jort is a jean short, but like, what does that have to do with butter? And it was actually just like a story of someone that put butter on a cat. And it's like, it's so weird, and unless you know that story, it sounds so weird. But for me, like, even like pop culture is becoming very like secluded. I don't know, that's not the right word, but I've always been bad at like pop culture, like knowing what other Americans are into. I'm just not that interested. I'm usually, watching anime and stuff like that. So I should probably stop.
Yeah, well, I wanted to address a couple more things, but also, first, just coming from me, as far as culture comes into play with language learning, a lot of people think that just by learning the language, they're more engaged with the culture because they can read comments or they can understand movies or TV shows. But it's like you said, Sam, there's so much culture in the way that we speak that we might understand something, especially for jokes or for just community common knowledge that's not really common for people who are outside of the community. I can only imagine, and it'd be an awesome conversation to have in the near future, how how are you able to understand some like phrases or some like slang even from other cultures or from other languages, like when there's no resources on it, it must be difficult for English in a way, because even there's so many countries that speak English and they have their own dialects, and if they use a joke or if they use a phrase that's common for them but not common knowledge for the rest of the world, it must be difficult. Um, and how do you like learn about it? Do you have to see it a lot of times and then figure out the meaning, or do you just ask about it if you're in a conversation? Or I mean, it must be difficult even listening to you talk about how the culture can play a role in understanding language. And I'd love to talk about that with you, Amy, and even for Matt, who's listening in the near future. But as far as how culture plays in with language learning and making things interesting or fun, I think that this is so big because some people either really appreciate how much they'll never be able to know or how much they don't know at their current level, and some people get extremely frustrated with the information that they don't know and the lack of resources, like I was just talking about. Because for me, studying Korean, it's easy when I'm thinking about the standard dialect. Like Amy mentioned, there's even a standard dialect for Mandarin, and there's one here in South Korea. But I'm in Daegu, which is kind of like the South, or a very specific dialect is used here, and there's not enough resources on it. And it is a little frustrating to study Korean when I have these textbooks that talk about these grammar points and these vocabulary words, but there are these different words that I've never heard, and now I have to get used to it because this is the way they speak here. And it could be frustrating, it could be interesting. I'm glad that it's something that you find interesting, Sam, because for me, I'm kind of 50-50. And 50-50 is like, sometimes I find it fun, and sometimes I find it extremely frustrating. So then it makes me feel like I'm not improving, or it feels like when I learn one thing, I have to learn 10 more things after. So it's a small accomplishment, and then it's followed by big challenges. And so it's really interesting that you mentioned culture at this point in our conversation, because it's something that we should definitely talk about in every conversation with languages, because they're so closely tied together. And hopefully it is the reason why people decide to study a language, not just to say that they can speak two different ways, but so they could connect with the people that they're using the language with. And so it's a really good point. I talked a lot, but I had something else to say for Matt. And Matt, also briefly going back to board games, and just not just board games, but going back to using games for language learning. Um, if you are interested in the Legendary Language Learners games, if you follow him and message him, then he would love to send a PDF game or just describe more about the different types of games that he offers and which one or ones might work best for you. So please check him out. And some of the things that he mentioned too. There's not just Duolingo and Anki, but there's the Letner box. I hope I'm saying it right, or Letner Race. Again, if you message me or Legendary Language Learner, then I'm sure we'll be able to give these resources as well. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that too while it's on my mind. But yeah, this is a really interesting conversation because culture is such a big part of learning a language, and coming from someone learning English, it's a huge topic because there's so many cultures that use English. And so thank you for that. And hello for the new listener. If you would like to speak, you can request to, but you're not forced to.
Also, we've been speaking for almost an hour, so I think we should probably start wrapping up soon.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, but maybe I face some connection problem. But anyway, I think, yeah, culture is something very, very, like, related to any language. So if we have to learn a new language, we have to go through the culture. And I think there is a big mistake with all the methods they use it to learn a new languages. The problem is they use a very old language when they teach people a new language. I mean, the resources is too old. I discover that people in English, they talk in a very different way if I compare it to like a curriculums. The problem is they use kind of a Shakespearean. I don't know why they keep doing the wrong things and they expected a good result. So people nowadays talking a very different English comparing to English in boxes. And also there is a written English and spoken English. So I don't know why people, focusing in a grammar where the grammar is the last thing, I don't think we can speak language through grammar. Grammar, I will give you a very small example. When I say I have been going to, people nowadays they say I've been. It's like a one word. I've been is a one word. Where I see lots of teachers do it, I have been. So why there is a big difference between learning and talking. So I have to say there is something wrong we have to solve. And I've been teaching myself. I discovered lots of difference between curriculum and actual learning or in reality. So anyway, this is just an idea. I think we have to stop learning in a traditional way, and let's say a child born in UK. So for 2 years he just listened, and suddenly he start talking. So why we teach people a grammar in the beginning? Why we not just speak and listen and then teach them the next step? Because the problem is we do the upside down. We start with teaching them the writing instead of speaking. Normal child start talking before he start writing. Why we do it in this way? Why we start with the writing where it's a difficult thing and it's a big barrier? How can people write when they don't have the basic thing? They couldn't even communicate with teachers where they cannot speak. So we teach them the hardest thing in the beginning, and when we do it in the wrong way, how can we expect a good result? I wish you just give me a clue about it.
So sometimes the textbooks, you might be having textbooks that are in British English. So if you're in a space with a bunch of Americans, then yeah, we do say some things differently than British Americans. Also, I believe a lot of textbooks, they teach more formal English. So, like, the way I would speak at work or, like, in a meeting is different than how I would write or talk in a space because it's a different situation. I do 100% agree with you that maybe language learners should be using real materials that are above their their comprehension, just to get a feel for, like, what does a natural conversation sound like. Like, no, I'm going to blank. But you want to speak, Tiara?
Well, I wanted to briefly jump on this because the topic that Sam is addressing is so big. And one thing to know about me, Sam, is that I also had a lot of experience in college. My minor was linguistics and comparative linguistics, and I also took a lot of education courses because I thought I was going to be a language teacher in the United States. And just from my experiences with those and the TEFL certificate I have for being a teacher here, this is touching on one of the teaching strategies or teaching methods. And it is something that is important to talk about in the language community because people have a lot of different opinions about what is the most important aspect of teaching a language and what things should go first or second, or what's the real value of learning this way versus that way. And so I think that this could be a series of topics, not just something that we could talk about in 1 hour. And I think talking with you has given us a lot of things to address. Amy gave some good information about where the resources could be coming from, and that also plays in with the history of education between the UK and the US, because maybe you know, or maybe even some of us don't know, but the UK has a lot more to do with the US education system we have now than we think, especially when it comes to language learning. And so this is a huge topic, and I'd love to talk about this in like a separate meeting too. But what I will say is that it does play a role in people's motivation to learn the language. Some people think that this is the only way to learn, and that this is how we've been taught to learn the language. And it's hard to get out of that mentality. But for the people who are able to switch their mind from, I have to learn grammar first, to being exposed to the language from the beginning, this also plays a role in the kind of learning style you have. And I haven't talked much about my platform. However, please feel free to scroll through my website and get to know a little bit more about me and what that website is about, because we do talk a lot about learning styles. And this is something that this is also touching on what I worked hard on, which is working with people's true interest, or the way that they feel comfortable learning, or the way that they feel like this is the way I want to learn. And in the language community, all of the big resources, or even some of the smaller ones, don't focus on what mindset the learner has when they come into a language. And the whole process, the language learning journey, yes, it's long, but it's also open-ended, and no two learners learn the same way. And no two language learners have the same teaching method, or even their learning method. I've kind of spun most of the teaching styles into a learning style. And the one that you're kind of not attacking, but one of the ones that you're kind of criticizing is the one of the teaching approaches that I've turned into a language style, a learning style. And it might be really interesting for you to read about that, since one, the website is completely in English, and trust me, between the quizzes and all of the blogs and all of the content that I've put on there, it's over 100 pages of written work related to different studies and experiences that I've had. And I think it could be a good resource for you. But just know that you're not alone in the way that you think about, why are we approaching languages this way when you can do it this way? And the very short and unfortunately not interesting answer to that is there's more than one way to learn a language. So you might appreciate this way of learning, which is kind of similar to me in terms of just jumping into it and seeing what you like, what you don't like, what you know and what you don't know, and just practice and make mistakes. That's one way. But another way, which some people feel comforted by, is the classic classroom setting. And there's 4 different personalities and learning styles that I've kind of taken the research on the teaching styles and turned into learning styles. So there's a lot there for you for that. But I just wanted to briefly mention it without plugging myself. But again, it's a huge topic, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this.
Yeah, appreciate it. I know the problem is that all the materials and resources made for average people. The problem is we have a different way to receive things. Some people are like a visioner, some people like listener, some people they combine between like 2 or 3 methods. So yeah, I know the difference between people when they're receiving information. But yeah, my debate was about the whole curriculum. I'm not talking about this, but anyway, I will be grateful to take like this link, or I could say the website that you've been talking about. Sorry, I haven't got the the name of the website, but if you have a link that you can share it with me, so I can go and search and see all these materials and the link that you've been talking about, so I could have a look and learn a new thing about it.
Yeah, so one of the ways you can find my link, if you click on my profile, it will be right there. I'm trying to figure out how to share it because Amy, oh, you just did it. That's great. I'm pretty new to Twitter Spaces actually, so I'm glad, but Amy shared 2 links. She shared one for Matt, the one that I was talking about earlier, and then she sent one for me. And so please feel free to go on that website and learn more, because if you're like me and you're interested in that aspect of language learning, like there's a psychology, there's a method, there's so many debates on what's the right way or what's the best way for learning a language. And because the answer is just not clear, there's also a lot of conversations that I'll be having on that platform to support different learning styles and appreciate the ways people learn so that they can reach their language goals, which is, as you'll read on most of the platforms I have, that's the main message too. So thank you in general for just joining us and being so open to everything that we've been talking about. And it's so nice to see that you are so passionate about this aspect of language learning. So truly, it's been a wonderful experience talking with you. And it's just a great reason for me and Amy to keep doing these talks, because we've met so many wonderful people just by doing this every week. And the last thing that at least I'll say before it seems we are going to close soon, but I would love for you to come every week. We're trying to do a chat about a different topic. And if there's anything that you would like for us to talk about, again, I think it's important to talk about language and culture, especially next week, and see how people view this topic, and then take it from there. I have notes about, again, the resources aspect, and it's going to be a series for talking about different language styles or learning styles, because it's a topic that needs to be addressed. But I'm so glad that you've been with us, and for even the new listener, thank you for listening. I hope that this was a little helpful, even though you jumped in the middle of our conversation, but thank you for listening. And yeah, I'll give it to Amy, but have a wonderful day, and please check all of our stuff out. We're just advocating for different aspects of the language learning journey, which is long and it's big. And the thing that I have to say about it is there's no right or wrong answer for how to do it, as long as it's a way that agrees with you and allows you to explore a new aspect of yourself and the way you view the world. So, thank you. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you, guys. I was very happy to be here, and also I appreciate everything that you're sharing with me today. And also, I would say I've been enjoying the way you express everything smoothly, and yeah, I feel comfy when I've been listening to you and Amy. Thank you, and wish you all the best, and see you again and again. Thank you. Have a nice time, and bye. Thank you.
Yes, it was really great to meet you, Sam, and Mohammed, and Henry was here for a bit. But yeah, we'll end tonight's space. Check out our stuff. I'll see you. Bye.